Now, what we want to do is look at how to make a project presentation a little bit differently. We call this the presenter's approach. The intent of this example is to provide images or pictures to convey your message rather than just words. This allows the audience to focus on what you, the presenter, have to say instead of reading or be preoccupied with words on a screen. The value of this approach is the audience does not have to read the words displayed. It stops you as a presenter from reading the words that are displayed. It allows you as a presenter to modify or to change your presentation based on the perceived needs of your audience. It forces the audience to look at you and pay attention to you. It demonstrates that you are knowledgeable and confident in the material that you are presenting. The downfall of this approach is you need to know your presentation material very well. You become the presentation, which can be good or not so good, depending on how much practice you put into your presentation. Now we're going to look at slide 1. We're actually going to go through the same presentation of the standard presentation. We're going to do it a little bit differently. Slide 1 is basically where you would introduce yourself and your team members here and the name of the project. In this case, we're going to call it the proposal for the Public Works Move project. The next thing we want to do in slide number 2 here is we want to let the audience know what the problem is. What is the project all about? What problem are we trying to solve in this particular project? This comes from your project statement when you identify what the problem is or the solution happens to be. In this case, it's Environmental Canada. So we don't tell them what the actual problem is. We lead them through a series of pictures. For example, this is an image of somebody that says, "What is the smell?" And the next image is, "What is this? It looks like waste dumping into a lake." We get to where we're going to reveal to them what the actual problem is. And in this case, it's the sanitation sewer. And then we're going to say, this came about because of the way that Environmental Canada actually did a review of the city of Vineyard View and come up with a mandated proposal that they must improve this. Now the good news is that the Environmental Canada is willing to split the cost of this project equally. So they're willing to put some money behind it to help the city become compliant to this new review law. Well, what do we need to do? Well, first and foremost, what we need to do is we need to get the tenant out of the building, because our project really involves 3 very important things. One is we're going to move from one building to another building. We're going to move people, 16 people and 3 pieces of equipment. And we're going to be compliant by November the 3rd, because if we're not compliant by November the 3rd, there is a penalty. So that's what the project's all about. And what do we need to do that? First of all, we have to get the tenant out of that building. Secondly, we have to renovate the building to accommodate the 16 people and the 3 pieces of equipment that are coming in there. Next, we must actually install the equipment and make sure the equipment is operational. And then we must modify the buildings for the staff have a place to work. And then finally, we must do the actual move. Now, here's where we're actually going to say, we've defined what the project is. What we're going to do here is we're going to give a visual of what it sort of, the project is really about, and kind of what we think is going to take to get there. So, mission complete, November the 3rd. We have to be there. Mission complete by November the 3rd. And the penalty is $. The reason why we're doing this is a penalty. That penalty is $5,000 per week of every week that we don't meet November the 3rd timeframe, as per Environmental Canada mandated compliance requirement. So here's the sort of the process of how we're going to get there. We want to get to compliance on November the 3rd, which is moving, which is what our project is basically about. We're going to start on August the 7th. We're going to put the team together. We'll make sure we have the right team with the right skills. Then we're going to do some planning. By September the 6th, we'll have the planning all done. Then we're going to start to move. We're going to move them, do the renovations at the same time. We're going to move the people and move the equipment in there. And then by October the 30th, the move will be completed and we will be compliant by November the 3rd. So those are steps that we go through, the milestones that we go through in order for us to get to our desired state, being compliance. Now, what is needed to be successful? Quite simply, teamwork. Time is of the essence. Time is very short here. So we have to have a team that's cohesive, a team that can work hard, a team that will get the job done. Now, this is a slide we put in here simply for, you don't need to put this in every presentation, but this is where you can actually emphasize your team members and go through each one of your team members and tell the audience what your skills are. I'm not going to do it here, but basically that's the desire, or that's the whole idea, having this blank screen. It makes them focus on you, so you can show your passion and your desire and all those things from your standpoint about your team. Let's move on. What is needed to be successful? Well, we need support. We need support from all departments, all areas within the city. Everyone must give us support in order for us to meet this very tight timeline. We must make sure we have a project manager and a team that's multi-skilled so that we can handle all things that come up. We must make sure we have some planning from an engineering standpoint, renovations of the building, how we move the equipment in. So planning is very important to have the skills of an engineer and an architect. We then need a solid contractor that can get the job done in the time frames that we need the job to get done. And then ultimately we need some engineers to check out the equipment to make sure it's operational when we put it into the new building. And finally we will contract some movers to actually make the move. So those are things that are needed for us to be successful. Next thing you want to display here is basically how much. And you can see there's a calculator there. It gives an illusion or an impression that there's actually been some calculations there. And we've got some figures in there. Don't worry about those figures adding up. Don't put the total there, just to show that this is about the budget. The next screen will take care of it. The next screen, what we do is we take those figures from the calculator and we just lay them across the screen here to demonstrate the values are there. And then what we do is we fill them in. In our case, $68,000 for teamwork. That's all the staff cost is going to take for us to do that. The team and the project manager and all the skills that are required is going to cost us $68,000. We're going to spend $10,000 on contracted service. We're going to spend $151,000 to renovate the new building. We're going to spend $10,000 in moving the equipment from where it is now to the new building. And we're going to allow $10,000 for things that we just know that will probably happen. For the unknown, for example, we're going to put that into a contingency fund and we won't draw on that until such time as that actually happens. This gives us a grand total of $249,000. So that's what it costs. $68,000 for team, $151,000 for the renovations, $10,000 for contracted service, $10,000 to move the equipment, and $10,000 for the unknown. What we really want to do, and then what this is illustrating here, is that what we really want to do is we want to say, what is the cost versus the value of this? So our cost is $249,000. But remember, Environmental Canada will split costs with us. So they'll pay $124,500. So we, the city, pay $124,500. That's the cost to the city. So our cost here is quite reasonable. Our cost versus the value of that. And the whole value of what we're really trying to achieve is the right to a healthy environment. So from the city standpoint, although Environment Canada has mandated us to do this, from the city standpoint, it's probably good that we really create a healthy environment for our residents. So that's the cost versus the value. Now, how are we going to do this? How are we as a project team going to do that? Let's move on. Well, like all things that we do when it comes from project management, we plan it, we manage it, we do it, we evaluate it, we review it, we make adjustments, and we do it again. And we continue on that path. So basically, that's the way that we're going to handle this project. Again, I want to emphasize that people make projects successful. The very first key that we need to have here, and the thing that's really the most important ingredient to success, is having the right skills for the job. Not just having people to do it, but the right skills to do the job that needs to be done. And then from there, we as a project team and the project manager, we need to empower them. We need to motivate our staff. We need to get them involved in things. We need to be active. We need to make sure that they're rewarded for the results. And we manage all their performance. And it's basically the people management thing. But we get the people with the right skills and we empower them to do things so they can be creative. Then we'll have a very important ingredient for success. Next thing we are cognizant of in the city, and the city is always cognizant of, the quality of work that needs to be done. The city has a very solid and a well-established quality plan, or how it does its quality, and basically we believe in the city that quality is a reflection of our values. And again, we do the planning, we do it, we check it, right? We make adjustments and we act. Very similar to how we do projects. Is basically we plan, do, check, and act to ensure that the quality is always built in to everything that we do. Now, there is going to be some procurement. We need to have some movers. We need to have some truckers move the equipment over, so there will be some procurement. We will utilize our purchasing department to ensure that everything is done according to rules and regulations that we've sent out to how we procure things. But again, it's the plan it, conduct it, control it, and close it. We as the project team will oversee that. Purchasing will be the actually ones to go out there and find that. We will come up with statements of works or items of interest or whatever is required in order for purchasing to put out a tender or put out some sort of request in order to get us the appropriate contracted service that we need in order to achieve the goals of the project. Now, the negative side of projects is that there's always risk to a project. Every project contains some risk, and some projects are so risky that we don't even want to do this project. But we actually have a risk management plan to do that. We identify the risk, we then assess the risk for its impact and its probability, impact if it does occur, and probability of it actually occur. We then come up when we evaluate those, identify our top high priority, high impact risk. We then have some review control. We call these triggers. We look for triggers, and they're basically things that if we see this, then we know that that risk is probably going to happen. And then we control that risk, we monitor that risk, we set aside funds to overcome those risks. And they're just funds that are set aside. They are never allocated until such time as the risk actually occurs. So the funding's there if we need it. We have a plan where it identifies what we're going to do and how much it's going to cost. And basically we don't draw on that until the risk actually occurs. Now in this particular case of this project, we've identified some very key risks. Number one is it's time to go. We've moved into a new building, but there's a tenant in there right now. I'm a little reluctant to move as it stands right now. We have some plans of how we're going to do that, some incentives, but we must be cognizant that for every day that tenant doesn't move by the time it's specified they should have moved, then the project could have the possibility of being delayed by that same day. If that adds up to a week, we end up paying $5,000 as a penalty. So that's a big risk. We have a plan for that. Next risk is the renovations of that. Maybe we don't get the renovations done. Maybe the back door doesn't get fixed in time for us to move in equipment and things like that. Again, we have the same thing. We'll make sure we have a solid contractor with a good reputation of doing things on time. We will maybe even offer some bonuses. Again, getting back to every week we're delayed, $5,000, we could offer some bonuses to do that. The other thing is the equipment's coming up. It's coming in the wintertime or almost the winter time, so there could be some accidents that happen in that, so we have to have a contingency of how we move that, when we move it, why we move it. We have a plan for that too. We need to have the equipment. And the last thing, and probably one of the most important things, is we have 90 days. Our risk is we only have 90 days. That's it. The risk is we don't do it 90 days. There's a penalty for that. So that's a huge thing. So all of our planning, everything that we actually do is around this time frame. We will make sure that we meet that 90 days, that we're compliant for Environment Canada to avoid the penalty of $5,000 per week. Now, communications is always important in projects. But we have to ask ourselves, because time is so short, and this is a mandated thing, we know precisely what we have to do. How much communications do we do? Because for everything we take away from the task at hand, for example, if we do communications like we normally would do, communications would take away from our limited resources to get the job done. So what we've decided to do is we're going to be like the three monkeys. We see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. So if there's nothing wrong, our communications will be nil. We will only report on exceptions. Our communications will not just be a blurb of how we are right now. It'll be on exception. So that's how we're going to handle communication, which allows us to focus more on the activities that need to be done. Now, from our standpoint, as a project team, we recognize there's two very important ingredients that successful projects always have. One is hard work. That is, they have the people with the skills that are willing to get the job done and work hard in order to ensure that they meet the goals of that project. Driving those people is this thing called self-confidence. They're confident that they know what the heck it is that they need to do in order to be successful. And those two things, hard work and self-confidence, are basically the two most important things for success in any project. We now ask you that you know about the project, you know about us. Do you have confidence in us to get the job done? Now you just wait here about 5 seconds, 10 seconds. You're probably not going to get an answer, but basically you ask that question and then you move on. And this is where you basically say, does anybody have any questions? Again, remember that questions can be very difficult here. If there is questions that are going to take a long time or difficult to answer, you might want to park them. You might want to point them to the project management plan. But answer only the questions that are easy. You might want to take it offline. So questions need to be handled appropriate, right? And then at the end, you can thank them for their time. This is an optional thing. Some project managers do this. Some project managers don't do this. But basically, it's a good gesture to do that. And then that would be the end of your actual presentation. Now, what I want to do is I just want to wrap up. I just want to bring back the value of a presenter's approach to this. The value is there's not words on the screen, just pictures and images. People focus on you as the presenter. They get to see your passion, your desire, the things that make you a qualified individual that's going to work hard and have the self-confidence and have the confidence to get the job done. They get to see you. That's the good part about it. Because if you're a really good presenter, then you present and you get what you want. If, again, you're not so good at that, it doesn't mean that you should always put words in there. It means that you probably need to practice a little bit more. So just practice. Do research. Make sure that you go through your presentation multiple times in order so that you can have a really good understanding of the material that you're presenting. It's a better way, I believe, as a presenter to present a project plan. So what it really boils down to is that instead of focusing your audience on words on the screen like this, which is almost impossible to read and understand and takes a long time, is that you focus on who you are as the presenters, basically that. So the spotlight becomes on you, not on words on the screen. This is the value of this, is that it becomes you. You become the presentation. By using images, you become the presentation. That is really good as you mature and become a very good project presenter. Remember this very important thing about projects. You do not get what you need. You get what you present. Bye.